So I genuinely do not know shit about Godzilla. I have never seen a Godzilla film until this year with -1. So as a movie fan and not a Godzilla fan, this movie's awesome. If anything, I was more invested in the human drama and the main character's struggle to continue living after everything he went through. It was a fantastic and very well done storyline. The Godzilla stuff was great too though, obviously. I was really floored by that one sequence towards the middle in Ginza. You know, it gave me the same sense of dread and urgency as I felt when trying to find the Ginza line in Persona 5. I think the movie so thoroughly anchoring you in the lives of these human characters really made the impact of this dumbass big lizard showing up and completely uprooting people's lives a lot more impactful. Once again, remember that I've never seen a Godzilla movie before, so maybe all the other movies do this too. I could just be talking out of my ass without knowing. I'm gonna make a wild guess that William is gonna claim this part when I send it to my editing Discord server, and he'll probably have stuff to add since he actually knows what Godzilla is. Yeah, the movie was great, I liked it. Take it away, William.
Godzilla -1 is the latest Japanese film in the Godzilla franchise, made to celebrate the then upcoming but also currently right now happening 70th anniversary of the franchise. This is the 47th film overall, the 41st Japanese film, 40th Japanese live-action film, and 4th film in the Reiwa era. Directed by Takashi Yamazaki, known mostly in Japan for the Always Sunset First trilogy and films such as The Great War of Archimedes and some anime adaptations, while here in the West he would best be known for his animated films such as the Stand By Me Doraemon movies and Lupin the Third the First. Mostly Lupin the Third the First. This has been the first Japanese Godzilla film for a lot of people here in the States that weren't already fans of the franchise. In fact, this is the first Japanese Godzilla film, and by extension first Toho film, to be distributed in the West by Toho themselves instead of through a third-party distributor like Funimation or some other old dead company like AIP. This is the first film made since Toho announced their World of Godzilla initiative a few years back to make The King of the Monsters more successful outside of Japan. And it seems that this initiative has more than paid off, as the film has been lauded with major critical and commercial success, and it deserves all of it. There are many, both fan and non-fan alike, saying this is the best film in the series. And while it's too early to really judge that, it absolutely is in the top 5, if not top 3. Everyone knows what Godzilla in general is about, created as a response to the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, being an allegory for nuclear devastation and all, while Godzilla in that time has gone on to represent other things such as climate change and natural disasters, and has been used as a vehicle to critique other issues such as commercialism, capitalism, pollution, the nuclear allegory has always been the one that everyone thinks of, and the one that will always be attached to the character in some way, shape, or form, whether Toho likes it or not. Godzilla -1 seeks to once again go back to that representation of the character, but for the first time in the series, do so by making it a period piece. Set between 1945 and 1947, the movie begins in the closing days of the war. For the first time, we see the actual aftermath of the bombings, atomic or otherwise, and how it affected civilians. And we get a lovely story about survivor's guilt and the will to live to go along with it. And that segues into the characters. Bar none, this is the best human cast of any film in the series. Now, contrary to what people with this profile pic will tell you in YouTube comments and on Twitter, the series has had good, likable, and memorable human characters before. Everyone loves Corn Guy and Egg Dude. Those commenters just don't actually know that because they've only seen 2 of the movies ever, and one of them was GVK.
Tap or no tap.
But -1 beats out basically all of them, and that includes 1954. I know, heresy. And part of that goes back to that segue from earlier. In previous films, the main cast were typically those in positions of power. Politicians, military personnel, government scientists. The most blue-collar Joes here are usually like journalists. Here, while Shikishima and most of the others with him are veterans from the war, when the time for action comes, it is established that they are civilians. Neither the US or Japanese government are offering any help to stop this threat. These are just regular people who now have to beat impossible odds to save what's left of their way of life. The first we see of Tokyo in this film is pure rubble. They haven't even begun to rebuild after the air raids killed so many people. And we follow over the next year as Shikishima and his new accidental family of Noriko, Akiko, and a neighbor Sumiko have to find some sort of normalcy and keep going. Shikishima gets the job as a minesweeper and meets Doc, Captain, and Kid, 2 of which were also in the war. We get to know all these characters and care for them before the threat of Godzilla makes itself known. And our main character already has prior history of Godzilla, as he actually encounters a smaller version of him in the first 15 minutes of the film. Godzilla first appears on Odo Island, a fictional island that we first saw in the original film. The Godzilla here is actually a reference to the legend of Godzilla from that movie.
海の王を食い尽くすと今度は陸へ上がってきて人間までも食うそうだ。
And this is where Shikishima's motivation comes from, as he and one other person are the sole survivors of that original attack. Coupling that with the fact that Shikishima was supposed to be a kamikaze pilot, he suffers from extreme survivor's guilt. You want to see him overcome his struggles and find happiness in the end, along with his newfound friends and family. Also, Doc is incredible and best boy, send tweet. It's so satisfying seeing who are essentially just normal people have to deal with Godzilla. Yes, most of them are ex-military, but this was war times. They had no choice. It was either die for your country, or just die. This is the most emotional film in the series, with multiple moments that actively made me choke up or get teary-eyed, especially that last line. Helping this is the score. Something non-fans might not be aware of is that one of the most beloved aspects of the series to fans is its music. Godzilla has a long history of incredible and memorable themes. The scores are very melodic, intense, and upbeat, with genres ranging from marches to electronic and even some rock. The score in this movie, however, is very, very different, going for a much more atmospheric score, and yet it stands alongside some of the best in the series. Naoki Sato nailed the tone of the movie, capturing both the ever-present dread and the undercurrent of hope throughout the entire film. There are two songs that best demonstrate this, the first being the new theme for Godzilla himself in this film. It can be heard in several tracks, but the track Divine is the one I'll spotlight here. The theme is dark and overwhelming, and it perfectly encapsulates the colossal threat that he poses in this film. The heavy brass coupled with the human choir and strings give the feeling that this is a godlike beast that you stand a very little chance of beating. And on the flip side, we have the theme that plays for the human cast while they're preparing for the final battle. It plays in several tracks in the second half of the movie. I'll list resolution here. It gives a sense that this is such a dire situation, and the odds are stacked so against them that it's near impossible for them to overcome him, and yet, despite this, the song is so hopeful throughout that even against these odds, the plan will work. It has to work. The music in the movie is so great and will be a score to keep in conversation with some of the best in the series, up there with Ifukubi's best. Speaking of which, of course, the classic Ifukubi theme plays 3 different times in the film in 3 flavors, with new recordings of 3 classic arrangements. The version from Mothra vs. Godzilla, complete with Mahara Mothra at the end, the full version containing the March Vamp and the King Kong theme from 1962, which was famously used as the credits theme for Godzilla vs. Destoroyah, and a simple version of just the theme itself playing over the first half of the credits. Godzilla himself is done super well in this movie. Everyone has been gushing about the effects in the film, so I don't need to go too deep into that. Yamazaki oversaw the effects himself, which makes sense because before he was a director, he was a VFX guy. And what they do with Godzilla here is great. Most notably the scenes in the ocean. Due to the nature of suitmation in early CG, water scenes in previous films were much harder to do. As such, most water scenes before were either a quick fight against a monster or a vehicle, or just a scene to show him traveling. Even though he's semi-aquatic, we don't see him in water all that often. You'd either risk drowning the suit actor or using early 2000s CG, which didn't even look that good back then. But now with modern CG standards, they can do so much more with it. And these scenes are the highlights of the film. Of course, there's the atomic breath scenes. In this film, the breath actually functions the same way the actual atomic bombs did, resulting in a full-on implosion and mushroom cloud. This has technically happened before in GMK, but that was for one shot for thematic purposes, and every other shot in that movie, it's still just a laser. Having the atomic breath actively represent a literal aspect of the bomb brings it back to the original film, in that the initial air spray version of the atomic breath was meant to be a way to visualize the spread of radiation, which in real life is invisible. Then we have Godzilla's design in the film. While at a glance, it's not too different from other past designs, many citing it as a fusion of the legendary Godzilla and the Heisei Godzilla. When you look closer, there's a lot more to him. As in, those aren't scales, those are scars. Once again, we're bringing it back to the themes of the original film by having his scales and skin look more like haloid scars and radiation sickness instead of more standard reptilian scales like in later films. One very cool thing to note about Godzilla here is his calling card. Whenever Godzilla is near, he brings up deep-sea fish with him. We see an ocean of dead and mangled fish rise up around our heroes whenever Godzilla is about to appear, literally declaring death by bringing death with him. Not only is this extremely ominous, it's also great foreshadowing to the method in which the main cast will attempt to defeat him later. The way Godzilla moves in this film is also reminiscent of classic suitmation, just looking straight ahead and marching on. In action scenes, sure, he's much more realistic and active, But during the Ginza attack, everything he's doing, save for the dorsal plates, could be replicated with a classic suit. So all in all, we get a Godzilla who feels classic, yet modern, showing us things we haven't seen before, but giving us more of what we want. They made Godzilla scary and foreboding again, that's an achievement. And what elevates all of this is the cinematography. And I'm gonna say it now, this is the best shot film in the series. In a way, it's a good answer to what Shin Godzilla did in 2016. That film was a modern film done in a classic style and deliberately shot in a very cold, impersonal way, which works for the political drama that was trying to be, but Minus One, on the other hand, is a classic film done in a modern style. It feels very warm. The focus is on the characters, and whenever we get big sweeping landscape shots, it's to show the devastation of Japan after World War II and Godzilla, or to show the actual people there living their lives and coming together. There's no other film in the series that looks like this. I have to give a shout out to one sequence on Odo Island, where the camera follows the mechanics around as they're under attack. It's great. Released in Japan in mid-January and in the States the last week of January for a 1-week limited run, the film was reissued as Godzilla Minus One Minus Color, a black and white version of the movie. A fun way to rewatch the film. Some people will tell you that this is the best version of the movie with the black and white color adding to the dread and atmosphere. Others, however, will have issues with the lighting and feel that it makes some details harder to discern. I fall closer to that second camp, but there are scenes, particularly those with strong lighting like the atomic breath or anything out on open water, that just look great with it. If you watch the movie once and want to spice things up for a rewatch, it's a fun alternate way to watch it, assuming they actually release this version with the home release. With all that said, Minus One met all expectations from fans and received immense critical praise, something that doesn't get said a lot about this series. This thing has been breaking records since it came out in December and just became the first film in 70 years of this franchise to get nominated for an Oscar. I think that says enough there. Please check it out if you are at all curious and have the chance to. And if after watching it you want any other recommendations for the series, here's a few that I would recommend to general audiences to help them get properly introduced to the series. Oh, that was fun! I love hijacking James' videos. I wonder how much of this he's actually gonna let me keep in. Lamau. You know, maybe I should go back to making my videos again. The people need to know about Josie and the Pussycats! I didn't, here's the rest of the actual video you clicked on, or whatever, who gives a shit. Okay, bye.
It's over.